We're back for part 3 of Module 1, Communication Skills and Challenges. This session will talk about communication and some of the challenges you may encounter. Objectives: list types of communication, discuss factors that can affect an individual's communication, and discuss approaches to difficult communication situations. We have two types of communication. We have verbal and nonverbal. Verbal communication may be talking, singing, voice production from an electronic device. Examples of nonverbal could be using gestures, tone of voice, sign language, facial gestures, expressions, written communication. Successful communication involves a message, a sender, a receiver, and feedback. These guidelines will help promote a good communication. Sometimes our nonverbal communication speaks louder than our verbal. Be sure to watch your body language. Eye rolling and arms that are crossed could be interpreted as a negative response to other people. When addressing a resident, always use their preferred name and address yourself. Be honest and direct. Never give false hope. Keep your emotions in check and never argue with a resident. Some factors that may affect good communication include not understanding the words used, accents of a language, conflicting personality types, decreased hearing ability, and decreased mental status. Clichés and slang are also big barriers. We will all be confronted with difficult situations. Here are a few suggestions that may be helpful in those types of situations. Remember the transition to a nursing facility. An illness, disease, or life circumstances may be contributing to the difficult situation. Do not take their reactions personally. Here are some pointers in handling situations where anger is a problem. Always be kind and patient, allowing your relaxed body language to help de-escalate the situation. Think before you speak and do not argue. Combative behavior can cause harm to others. Give plenty of personal space if they are threatening to hit, but try to find out why they are unhappy. Do not leave a combative person alone as they are a threat to others. Learn not to take these difficult situations personally. An illness or disease or pain may be the reason for the situation. Military time. Medical professionals use military time to prevent confusion of AM and PM. On this diagram, the orange ring represents normal time, or civilian time. The white represents military time for the morning, and the gray is military time for the PM. Midnight starts the clock at 0000. An hour is equal to 100. If I add 100, or 1 hour, to 0000, I get 0100, 0100, or 1 a.m. 6 hours after midnight, I get 0600. 0000 plus 600. Look at 1000. It looks like 10 o'clock without the colon. Noon is 1200, and we will keep adding 100 to every hour after that. So 2 hours after noon, we would have 1400, or 2 p.m. 8 hours after noon would be 2000. 1200 plus 800, or 8 p.m. Most documentation is now electronic, but you may be required to do some paper charting as well. Always know that documentation is a permanent part of a resident's health record, even 7 years after their death. If working with paper charting, always use a black ink pen when documenting. Document as soon as you can after the care was given, but never before. Sign and date each entry, or as your facility policy states. Care plans are basically the instructions on how to care for each resident at a facility. Because nursing facilities strive for resident-centered care, each care plan is specific to that individual resident. You, as CNAs, have a role in helping the nurse determine how much assistance should be given to a resident because you have firsthand experience working with that resident. Remember, we can offer more assistance to a resident, but never less assistance according to the care plan. We have two types of observations that are used to collect information on people we serve. These observations can also help with care planning. This first is objective observations and are based on what we can see, hear, touch, and smell. This type of observation is fact. Here are a few examples of objective observations. Report any of these topics to your supervisor, such as the charge nurse. Some, such as complaints of shortness of breath or a report of a fall, need to be reported right away. Subjective observations are data collected from what residents or their families report to you. Example, Mom says that her right shoulder is hurting. This type of observation may be an opinion and not always accurate. Many individuals have decreased eyesight, but that doesn't make them blind. Here are some suggestions when working with people who have visual impairment. Always announce your presence before entering, even if the resident does not have visual impairment. Explain what you are wanting to do for them, but there is no need to speak loud unless they have hearing loss. Do not shout. The imaginary clock works well when describing location of food placement for those who have extreme impairment. Mashed potatoes are at 3 o'clock, Swiss steak at 6 o'clock, and carrots at 10 o'clock. So imagine the face of a clock on their plate. Glasses should be on and cleaned. Dirty glasses could cause a resident to fall, especially if they have limited eyesight. Try to keep everything in a resident's room in the same location. A visually impaired resident may have memorized their room in their mind. Hearing impaired residents can easily become scared by movement if unable to hear the movement. Try to approach people with a hearing impairment from the front so they can see you. Some will also try to read your lips to understand what you are saying. Make sure that you check all hearing aids to be sure they are working. Check the aids by closing your hands over them. If they are on and the batteries are working, the aids should squeal. Assistive technology is a variety of technologies that help maintain a greater level of independence for those individuals with a hearing, sight, or speaking disability. For those who are deaf, technology that uses light instead of sound to indicate that the smoke alarm is going off can be used. Relay Iowa, TTY, to communicate the deaf with deaf to communicate via phone as the message is transcribed to both the sender and receiver of the call. People in long-term care facilities that have speech difficulties tend to have suffered a stroke. CNAs that work with these residents frequently tend to pick up on the communication better than those who don't work with them that often. Communication boards could work well. These boards have pictures of objects, but also have letters if the resident wants to spell out what they want. Being patient with these residents is important to help prevent too much frustration. Can you imagine what it would be like not to be able to speak well? This concludes Part 3 of Module 1.